Have you ever stopped to consider what truly underpins the value of the money in your wallet? What makes that piece of paper, or that digital number in your bank account, worth anything at all? It's a question that has puzzled economists and philosophers for centuries. For centuries, the answer was simple: gold. The allure of this precious metal has captivated civilizations across the globe. That shiny metal made money feel real, tangible, and trustworthy. Its inherent scarcity and resistance to corrosion made it an ideal store of value. People placed their faith in gold, and that faith translated into economic stability. This was the gold standard, a monetary system where the value of a currency was directly linked to a fixed quantity of gold. It meant paper money was backed by a promise that you could, at any time, exchange it for a specific amount of gold held in reserve. This convertibility provided a sense of security and discipline to the financial system. Governments couldn't just print more money willy-nilly. They were constrained by their gold reserves. They needed physical gold in their vaults to back every note they issued, ensuring that the money supply remained tied to a tangible asset. This system aimed to prevent inflation and maintain stable currency values. But today, the reality is quite different. Money isn't backed by gold, silver, or any other precious metal for that matter. The link between currency and physical commodities has been severed. So, if it's not gold, what exactly is it backed by? What gives our modern money its value? Trust. It might sound simplistic, but it's the cornerstone of our modern monetary system. We believe our money will hold its value tomorrow, next week, and next year. This belief is largely because our governments and central banks say so, and crucially, because we all collectively agree to believe it. This shared confidence is what keeps the system afloat. This is called fiat money, a term that might sound complex, but the concept is relatively straightforward. It's currency backed by nothing but a promise from the issuing government to maintain its value and stability. How did we get here? To a point where trust replaced gold as the foundation of our financial system? It's a fascinating story, one filled with wars, economic crises, and groundbreaking ideas that reshaped the world's financial landscape. We'll explore the historical reasons why the world was so enamored with gold for so long, understanding its role as a safe haven and a symbol of wealth. We'll delve into the events that led the world to eventually let it go, examining the pressures and challenges that made the gold standard unsustainable in the modern era. And most importantly, we'll consider what this shift means for us today, in a world where money is increasingly digital and abstract. The global economy, with its complex web of transactions and interconnected markets, now runs on this shared belief in the value of fiat currencies. It's a system built on trust, on confidence in governments and institutions, rather than on the cold, hard reality of precious metal reserves. So how exactly did we make this transition, moving from heavily guarded vaults filled with gold to a world dominated by digital dollars and electronic transactions? Let's embark on a journey through the annals of history to uncover the answer, tracing the evolution of money from its metallic origins to its current, more abstract form. This is the story of your money, a story that is deeply intertwined with the history of civilization itself. It's the story of how belief, that intangible yet powerful force, ultimately became the world's most valuable asset, shaping economies and influencing the course of nations. Let's get started on this fascinating exploration. The gold standard, a monetary system once embraced by nations across the globe, essentially meant that every country's money was intrinsically tied to a fixed amount of gold. It was a system built on the tangible value of this precious metal. To illustrate, if the US declared that an ounce of gold was officially worth $20, and simultaneously, Britain declared that same ounce of gold was valued at £4, the resulting exchange rates between the dollar and the pound were not only simple to calculate but also remarkably stable over long periods. This predictability was a key feature of the gold standard. This inherent stability made global trade far more predictable and reliable for businesses and nations alike. International commerce flourished under these conditions. In this system, gold naturally moved between countries to balance trade imbalances, a physical representation of economic activity. In essence, if a nation consistently bought more goods and services from other countries than it sold, gold would physically leave its vaults to settle the difference. An increase in a country's gold reserves meant there was more money in circulation within its economy, which, in turn, generally caused prices to rise due to increased demand. Conversely, a decrease in gold reserves meant less money available, leading to decreased demand and a subsequent fall in prices, a phenomenon known as deflation. This automatic adjustment mechanism, driven by the flow of gold, was designed to keep national economies in a state of relative equilibrium, preventing extreme booms and busts. Crucially, if a government succumbed to the temptation of printing too much paper money without corresponding gold reserves, citizens had the right to demand gold in exchange for their paper currency, effectively forcing the government to maintain fiscal discipline and avoid runaway inflation. In many ways, the gold standard acted like a sophisticated thermostat for the global economy, automatically regulating temperatures and preventing overheating or freezing. It fostered a sense of stability, predictability, and trust in international financial dealings. That is, until the world underwent a period of unprecedented change and upheaval. But the gold standard was also inherently rigid in its structure and operation, and when faced with a major global crisis, it proved incapable of bending or adapting to the new realities. For a significant period, particularly during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the gold standard seemed like the perfect monetary system. But as history often demonstrates, true perfection is a rare and fleeting phenomenon. Ironically, the gold standard's greatest strength, its rigid link to a tangible asset, would soon transform into its most significant weakness, creating unforeseen challenges. And the world was on the cusp of discovering precisely why this seemingly unshakable system was ultimately unsustainable in the face of a global economic storm. The gold standard worked in peacetime, but World War I changed everything. War demanded more money than gold reserves could provide. Countries suspended the gold standard, printing money to fund the conflict. This unleashed inflation and, in some places, hyperinflation. Trust in money collapsed. Savings were wiped out. The US emerged with most of the world's gold, while Europe was left in debt. The old system was shattered. When the war ended, the world faced a new question. Could the gold standard be restored? The balance of power had shifted. The automatic stability of gold was gone, replaced by uncertainty. The world's economies would never be the same. The next chapter would test whether gold could ever anchor money again. After World War I, leaders tried to revive the gold standard. But the world had changed. Debts, reparations, and gold were unevenly spread. Britain returned to gold at the old rate, making its currency too expensive and hurting exports. France undervalued its currency, gaining an advantage. There was no coordination, just competition. Many countries held US dollars or British pounds as reserves, creating a fragile pyramid. Trust was gone and the system was unstable. The new gold exchange standard was a shadow of the original. It was rigid, unbalanced, and vulnerable. The world economy was a house of cards. It wouldn't take much to bring it down. The stage was set for disaster. In 1929, the US stock market experienced a catastrophic crash, a sudden and devastating collapse that sent shockwaves throughout the entire financial system. It was a moment of unprecedented panic and uncertainty. This crash triggered the Great Depression, a period of immense economic hardship and widespread suffering that gripped the nation and the world for an entire decade. Panic spread like wildfire. People, gripped by fear and desperation, rushed to banks in droves. They all had the same goal: to withdraw their savings before it was too late. They were demanding gold, the ultimate safe haven in times of economic turmoil, believing it was the only way to protect their hard-earned money. Banks, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of withdrawals, collapsed under the immense strain. Their reserves depleted, they were forced to close their doors, leaving countless individuals and businesses financially ruined. Trust in the financial system evaporated almost overnight, replaced by a deep-seated sense of fear and mistrust. The very foundation of the economy seemed to crumble. Countries also lost faith in each other's financial stability, as the crisis spread across borders, infecting the global economy. They began trading dollars and pounds, the world's major currencies, frantically for gold, seeking to convert their holdings into the perceived safety of precious metals. This massive conversion drained central banks of their gold reserves, threatening the stability of their currencies and their ability to function. The gold standard, which was originally meant to create stability and confidence in the international monetary system, now spread chaos and instability as countries desperately tried to maintain their adherence to it. Governments faced a terrible choice, a dilemma that would determine the fate of their nations: defend their currency by maintaining the gold standard, or save their economy by abandoning gold and implementing policies to stimulate growth and alleviate suffering. Raising interest rates to protect gold reserves, a common response at the time, only deepened the depression as it further restricted credit and stifled economic activity. One by one, recognizing the futility of clinging to a failing system, countries abandoned gold to fight the crisis with more flexible monetary policies and government intervention. Britain, a major economic power, left in 1931, and others soon followed, as the dominoes began to fall. Freed from the constraints of gold, they could lower interest rates, making borrowing cheaper and spend on public works and infrastructure projects to stimulate demand and create jobs, fostering recovery. Their economies often rebounded faster, demonstrating the benefits of flexible monetary policy in times of crisis. The US, however, stubbornly held on to the gold standard, but gold kept flowing out of the country, further weakening its financial position. President Roosevelt, facing mounting pressure and a worsening economic situation, realized that something radical had to be done to break free from the grip of the gold standard and address the crisis. The gold standard's era, an era of perceived stability but also of rigid constraints, was finally ending. Trust in gold as the ultimate anchor of the financial system was gone. Survival meant change, a willingness to embrace new approaches and adapt to the evolving economic landscape. The world was about to take a leap into the unknown, a bold experiment with new monetary policies and economic strategies. And America, despite its initial reluctance, would ultimately lead the way in this transformation, shaping the future of the global financial system. In 1933, with banks failing and gold reserves low, President Roosevelt took bold action. He made it illegal for Americans to own most forms of gold, forcing them to turn it in for paper money. This broke the direct link between citizens and gold. The government then devalued the dollar, raising the price of gold to boost exports and increase the money supply. The Gold Reserve Act centralized gold in government hands. Now, only the government could set the price of gold. This move made American goods cheaper abroad and helped fight the Depression. It was controversial, but it worked. The US dollar's future as the world's anchor was set. The gold standard was gone for Americans. But gold's story wasn't over yet. After World War II, the world needed a new economic system. In 1944 at Bretton Woods, 44 nations agreed on a plan. The US dollar would be tied to gold, and other currencies would be tied to the dollar. The US promised to exchange dollars for gold at $35 an ounce. The dollar became the world's reserve currency. Countries held dollars instead of gold. It was easier and earned interest. The IMF and World Bank were created to support global stability. For 25 years, this system fueled growth and trade. The US enjoyed exorbitant privilege. It could print money the world wanted. The dollar was as good as gold, backed by Fort Knox. But this privilege came with risks. The world depended on US discipline. The seeds of the system's collapse were already sown. The next crisis was just ahead. The Bretton Woods system depended on US gold reserves backing all those dollars overseas. But by the late 1960s, US spending soared on war and social programs, while gold reserves shrank. Foreign countries, worried, demanded gold for their dollars. The US couldn't keep its promise. There wasn't enough gold. In 1971, Britain asked to convert $3 billion into gold, the final straw. President Nixon chose to save the economy, not the gold standard. He suspended dollar-gold convertibility, ending Bretton Woods. The Nixon shock closed the gold window forever. The world's money was now pure fiat backed by nothing but trust. The era of gold was over. The dollar remained king, but now floated free. The global economy entered uncharted territory. Money was no longer anchored to anything physical. The experiment in trust had begun. Today, all money is fiat, valuable because we trust it. Governments declare it legal tender, and we believe in their promise. Central banks can manage crises by creating money and adjusting interest rates, tools impossible under gold. This flexibility helps prevent collapses, but it's risky. Without gold's limits, governments can print too much, risking inflation or worse. The value of money now depends on responsible leadership. Our entire economy runs on shared belief. We accept money because we trust others will too. It's a web of faith holding everything together. We traded gold's certainty for trust's flexibility. For all its flaws, this system endures. The story of money is now the story of trust, and so far the world keeps believing.